Hello, everyone, and welcome to this conversation presented by White House Custom Color.
Are you trying to mute me?
No, it's just real loud, and I can't.
I sold Amazon when it was $25.
Listening to listen, not listening to respond.
Yes. Oh, thank you for that.
Well, you know, it's my birthday today, Jed.
For real?
Yeah, I chose this date because, you know, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else but on a podcast with you on this Wednesday on my 56th birthday.
You are 10 years older than me, almost exactly. I
Really?
just
Your
turned
birthday
46.
When's your birthday?
A month ago, January 3rd, I just turned 46.
Wow. You're in your prime.
Is that right?
Everybody says you're in your prime no matter what your age.
No matter what year. Right.
Yeah, you
right,
could
right.
be like 200 years old and you're in your prime, Simon.
My kids asked me the other day, we were talking about this. My kids said, "Hey, Dad, if you could be any age again, what would you be?" And I said 18. Because, you know, retrospectively, 18 was my prime. I could dunk, you know, like different. Now I can't even jump 4 inches off the ground. And they got all sad and they were like, "But that was way before we were born." And I was like, "Yep, yes, it was."
Great. Way to bring it down, Jed.
Well, and way to talk about myself. Let's get back to you, Simon. Okay, seriously, you're 56 today. That's awesome. Thank you even more for doing this. But tell me a little bit about Simon.
Oh, Jesus, where to start, mate? Well, you know, I'm English. That's obviously a downer right there. And I managed to escape on one of those sailing boats. I think it was called the May Tulip or something like that. But it was a while ago. I escaped to the great land.
Is that right?
And I've been in the States. Man, I've been in the States 24 years.
Oh, well, you have been here for a while.
Yeah, I am. I'm American. You can't tell from this Brooklyn accent that I've sort of mastered.
They didn't tell me you were going to be this funny. I need to tone it down a little bit because I can get over the top.
Let it go, Jed. Let it go, mate. It's a Wednesday.
So here's for real what I have a few talking points, but I really want to sidestep those for the time being and really find out a little bit more about you and how does somebody get to where you are? Honestly, like, okay, so here's why I'm asking. It comes across however it comes across, but there are so many people these days, right, that would categorize themselves as photographers. You and I are on the older end of the spectrum, you know, compared to all these kids in their 20s and their 30s and even in their 40s. For me, I feel like I'm 30 years older than them sometimes. But it's different now than what it was 20 or 30 years ago, right? Like way different. And I know that's super profound statement, but you are at a level in the industry, in the photographic industry, that these days hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people aspire to reach. Right? That's true. That's just true. Let's just call it what it is. How did that happen for you? It was 30 years ago. Were you like, I'm going to be one of the world's preeminent photographers, and I'm going to focus on sport? I mean, how did you do that?
You know, I don't know. I don't actually know. And I think probably the secret for me is that I never really thought about that. It was never really
well, that's what I wanted to know. I had that sense.
Yeah, I mean, I want, obviously, you know, you want to be the best at what you're doing. But I don't think I had any sort of like, yes, I need to get to point, you know, whatever Z or whatever it is. I didn't have that in my mind. I was, I mean, partly maybe that's just down to short-sightedness from my perspective. I just was dealing with literally things in front of me, you know, looking at a lot of work.
So it's
really
a day
coming-
by
not-
day and a week by week, like stay at the grindstone type of thing. Like
a little bit
your
of
best,
that for sure.
do your best this week, do your best the week after, do your best the week after that.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly that played a big role for me. Not really wanting to look back. I mean, even now, I'm not really particularly interested in looking back at what, at images that I've done. I just want to keep moving forward. I still want to be a photographer. I still want to be shooting all the time. I don't want to be caught up with, I'm not interested really that much. Although the older you get, you begin to sort of, begin to sway into a bit more of a retrospective kind of situation.
That's what I was wondering that as I'm hearing you say that. I'm like, well, the older you get, don't you look back now? Because now you have this body of work, right? Like you've spent the majority of your career, like moving forward, thinking about what's next, bam, 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 bam. But at some point, don't you, Simon, step back and say to yourself, man, I'm kind of a big deal in a not, and I don't mean like this is you to yourself. This isn't you to anybody else, right?
Mm.
But don't you think to yourself, I have really accomplished quite a bit, and I have this huge body of work. I have all these amazing images, and maybe even more so to some degree, I have all these amazing experiences, these life experiences that so many other people, not just in my industry, but beyond, don't have. And I'm only 56. Really?
Yeah, I mean, I think the experiences is something that stays with you, or it resonates with me, more within looking back at the imagery I've taken. I'm not super, fired up really I'm happy to explain because it's great with, when you're Monday morning quarterbacking. I hate to use that pun, but
right.
It's great to look back at it. But at the time I was never thinking about it. It was just, hey, you got to move on to the next. You're doing this. And if you don't have your stuff together, you're going to fail at this next job that is more important than the one you've already completed. So that's definitely with me. I mean, that's part of who I am, I think.
Well, you got to keep that with you because there's the balance thing again. You got to keep that with you because your edge comes from that. Does that make sense? Like you don't want to rest on your laurels. You don't want to sit back there and get caught in a retrospective downward spiral.
If you talk to me next time and I'm like that, just, pull the trigger on the power.
Well, at the risk of you slipping into the retrospective abyss, I do want to ask you about a couple things about what you have done and where you have been. And I don't need to get stuck anywhere for too long. I'm looking through your images. I see the one where the guy, weightlifter's getting crushed by that. And I know that, you've probably talked about all your images a million times, but there's certain things that stand out to me. And here's what, we don't have to talk about any specific images, but just to bring that one up as an example, here's what went through my mind. You can have all the right gear, right? You can have even all the knowledge, but from my standpoint, you got to be like on the ball in those moments, right? You have to be paying attention. You have to be super focused because even if you have a brand new R5 sitting in your lap, right? And you know everything about that camera and you know it like, the back of your hand. If you can still miss the moment if you're not focused and paying attention to what's going on, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the skills that's totally overlooked with a sports photographer is the ability to concentrate. If you can't concentrate and you're checking your Instagram or your stocks and shares or, you're Snapchatting or TikToking or whatever, you are going to miss the moment.
For real.
There's no question about that.
Well, and I laugh at that.
It's a surprise.
It sounds funny initially,
right?
And yet I have a sense that that's like a real issue.
Yeah, it's a real issue. I think it's actually got worse. You know, I did a job a couple of years ago where they had a lot of young photographers with us, and we were meant to be mentoring the young photographers. And unfortunately, I'm brutally honest.
Like this.
And I said to the person who was with me, you know, this event is going to last 60 minutes. You got to turn your phone off because you need to concentrate on what you're doing. And it's really difficult because the smartphone has become this sort of like other attachment to you, this other limb almost.
Yeah.
And the desire to look at it means that you're not concentrating on shooting what's in front of you, because that's
right.
only got it's a limited time that you'll be able to shoot.
Right.
To understand that, even I mean, I'm not, you know, I mean, even myself, I find myself, I have to remind myself that whatever is on the phone, I can deal with it.
That can wait.
I can deal with it later. I've got to concentrate.
Right. Because you have a series of potential moments and like brief moments for someone like yourself that are going to be occurring in the next half hour, 45 minutes, hour and a half, maybe, who knows how long it is. And if you're not on the ready, you're going to miss it. And then it's gone.
Yeah. There's no getting back, you know, the one moment that everybody talks about from a game. There isn't. Sorry.
Go on.
I was going to say, I think all photographers have that dilemma. You know, they all, even if you're, you know, a product photographer, there's sometimes you just miss a moment and you can never get it back. Not just because it's a sort of, you know, Super Bowl Tom Brady moment.
Right.
It could be literally any moment. And the ability to concentrate, I think, is like a talent that is totally underplayed.
If you come out of were you just at the Super Bowl?
I was there, yeah.
You come out of a game like that, even, and I like how you mentioned, you know, whether it's Tom Brady or whether it's someone that no one's ever heard of, those moments still exist, right? If you come out of an event, whether it's the Super Bowl or whether it's something that's much smaller, and you get one great shot, is that a success in your mind? Do you think to yourself, you know, because there's lots of prep, the day is a huge day, and you come away from something like that, and in your mind, whether anybody else, you know, thinks it's a big deal or not, but in your mind, if you come away with a shot that's iconic in your mind and you think, I nailed it that time, was that day a success?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how you gauge that.
Yeah. I mean, I tend to sort of probably overanalyze after I try not to think about it initially, because I just don't, because it takes so much energy from you beforehand, as you suggested.
Right.
You know, I'm really anxious. You know, I look at where I'm able to photograph from, and I'm looking at those spots, and I'm like, of course, I want to be the only photographer getting the only photograph. So there's, you know, this pressure just mounts on you, and, you know, you're trying to sort of figure out all the answers to the problems that might occur for you. Yeah. And then come the game, you just got to get into it and concentrate only on photographing the game and trying to be aware of other issues that you might need. I mean, the Super Bowl is a good example because, you know, there was a female ref. Yep. That's something like you might slip your mind. You need a decent photograph of the ref, you know, and
because it was such a historic thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was something that I was asked for, but it's something that could just slip through the cracks, because really, I'm looking for a great action image. Right. I'm not looking around to photograph, you know, one of the sideline judges or referees.
Right.
So you gotta, you know, you're concentrating on you're thinking about I'm just sorry, I'm rambling about my process of how I attempt to figure it out or come up with an answer. So I'm thinking about all the issues that I'm going to face. I'm thinking about all the things that I want to photograph. And then I'm looking at the positions where I'm allowed to photograph from.
Yep.
And that's sometimes, that's like a gut punch right there, because you're like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then you're like, well, you can't go there. So that idea that you had is taken away straight away.
I remember when
it starts, and then you just got to be, you got to really concentrate. It's so easy to get distracted.
All the more reason to get rid of your phone for the time, it would seem to me. I remember when my wife's a photographer, we used to shoot weddings, and it sounds like what you're talking about is like to the nth degree, in that we would say, you had all these variables, all these things you got to think about. You got to make sure you get this, and this guy doesn't like to be photographed, so make sure he's in, all this stuff. Right. And we always, the wedding, you got that one day, you get that one shot, basically, of that day. You got to nail it. You can't redo it. You can't have a reshoot. That's it. And it sounds like that's your experience on a regular basis with these gigantic events. And in a relative sense, these super important shots that are going to be seen by thousands, if not 10,000s, if not millions of people on a regular basis. That is a lot of pressure.
I mean, there's a big difference there, Jed. I don't have the mother-in-law berating me constantly. So, that's, I get away with it there. I've done one wedding, and the pressure and the angst over that was enough. I never did another one.
You have a basis of comparison with one wedding, and that was all you needed. Yeah.
I was like, I could never do this job. It's too stressful.
Here's what you said, something that piqued my interest. It seems as though, because you were like, I want to be the one photographer that gets the one shot. What's that competitive piece like, to take that a little bit further for you and in your experience for others in that moment? Because I'm imagining you're not the only one that wants to be the photographer that gets the shot, right? What's that atmosphere like among your peers during an event like that?
Well, of course, you go into an event with that idea. It's a bit like rocking horse poo. It's completely not reasonable, is it? There's 10 million other photographers there, right. And some organizations have 10 million other photographers there, and right. You feel like, yes, I'm going to be the one, and it's oh my God. But you need something to spur you on, and that's definitely the competitiveness in me. Mm-hmm. I am competitive. It's a little bit of an understatement. I am, but
that's not a bad thing though for you.
It's not a bad thing, but to be first down to get the coffee in the morning, I kind of got to ease up a little bit. You
got to save it for the game, Simon. Save it for the game. Here's the other thing I was wondering. I was wondering in your scenarios, right? Because you photograph a lot of different events. How important, if at all, is it for you to be aware of how the nuances within the so you go to a football game. It's different than American football games, different than a soccer game, right? There's different rules, there's different nuances, there's different things that happen. Or you go to the Indianapolis or Formula One car event or a tennis match. I think I'm looking at Wimbledon right here on the screen. How important is it for you to be aware of the various nuances in these sports? If you're on the sideline of a soccer match, I'm going to use the American terms here because that's easier for me. How important is it for you to be aware that, there might be a through ball here any second, right? I gotta be in position, as opposed to not really understanding what's going on to be able to anticipate things like that. Do you study the sport itself? Do you try to become familiar with the nuances of whatever event that you're at so that you can anticipate things like that better?
I think it's a double-edged sword. You could sort of overthink it, of course, and then completely, there's no control over where the best image is going to take place. Mm. So you can overthink it. There's no question about it. But any kind of knowledge helps you maybe decide a position where you want to sit. So you know, I mean, I definitely, you know, any kind of, you know, any help. You need all the help you can get. I need all the help I can get as a photographer.
Well,
and
because there has to be times where you're photographing something that you're generally not very interested in. You don't have to say what they are, but like as opposed to something that you are really fired up about, you know, whether it's an event or a sport or whatever, where you're like, maybe you're super into tennis and you're like, I get to go to Wimbledon and photograph something that I'd be watching on TV at home anyway.
I mean, I don't think I've covered a lot of different sports. I don't really, for me, I like the variety because it does keep you a little bit on your feet,
right? Keep
you on the edge a little bit and makes you think. It's so easy to get in a rut and go to the same position. You know, you can wear a groove to the sort of the same old position you've been to. So there's a danger to being over familiar with the sports as much as there's a danger to not knowing anything.
That's interesting. I didn't think about it from that standpoint. It can keep you on your toes because you feel like you're not very familiar with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you know, and then you should definitely, you know, if you're getting assigned to do a sport that you've never been to before, it's always, I mean, you got to do your homework.
Right.
That's got to be included in the prep work that you should be doing.
Right.
If you don't, then you will just do what you see other people do.
Right.
And who's to say that's the right thing? I mean,
right. Right. Then everybody gets the same shot anyway.
Yeah.
Tell me this. So last year obviously was a unique year for you and everybody else on the planet. How does somebody like you that relies on sporting events and other big events, how do you handle now? You can speak about it a little bit retrospectively, even though it's still lingering, of course, now. It's not like we're on the other side of it completely. But what did that look like for you? Someone that relies on these big events. What did you do?
Yeah, I mean, man, what a year. I mean, I think 2020, I mean, no one was not affected by it. And I suppose, you know, I always, at the beginning of the year, I was doing an event and I'd seen the news coming out of China. And, you know, I was like, what would I do? You know, I asked myself that question. Right. And, you know, I had to think long and hard, but there are many things that I pushed to the side, are left on the bookshelf that I need to, you know, clean up and sort out.
Yeah.
So there was one project that, you know, I thought, well, if I'm going to have all this time, that's what I would do to keep myself somewhat structured.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, you know, I think I did a job on March 11th. I think almost around about that time,
that was right
stopped.
Before. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was at the very end of like normal life. For me personally, I think it was March 13th where we went into lockdown.
Yeah.
Basically.
And as much as I sort of had some sort of idea, you know, I'd kind of, you know, danced around doing something. You know, the reality was a little different. You know, suddenly everybody was in my house, you know, my family. I have 2 teenage girls, you know, my wife was working from home.
Yep.
And suddenly my private space, you know, during the day was invaded, you know, and they were all structured. And I was walking, I mean, even the dog was pissed off with me because I was walking it so much. So, you know, I was like, I was lost initially.
Sure. You didn't know what to do.
I didn't know what, I couldn't, if I said anything like, hey, good morning, I got my head bitten off. You know, if I said, you know, it was just mental in the house. And, man, yeah, as I said, the dog took the brunt of it.
Got poor dog. He's an easy target.
45 times an hour. But I knew I needed to sort of find something to give me some structure, you know.
Right.
No work. You know, that's all I've done for the last 30 bloody years. It's just keep going, you know, like I've been on the hamster wheel and suddenly it stopped and I flew off it, you know, I hit the wall. Right,
because you were always this kind of circles back to what we were talking about at the beginning, and this is what made me think about it, is that when you're in this mode for so
Right.
long where you're
Right.
just constantly, because that's really who you are and how you work and
Right.
what I think what really helps propel you, it seems like. And then all of a sudden it's like hitting a brick wall, whether you like it or not.
Right. Yeah. It was, I just kept telling myself that, there, obviously 400,000 families out there have it worse than I do. So,
Right.
I just kept telling myself, no matter how bad I have it, somebody has it worse than I do.
Right.
And I need to, I just can't keep walking the dog. I've got to do something else. So
what did that lead to for you?
it led to me doing things that I kind of hate doing and, tackling all the problems that I've sort of buried deep in the coffins of the office, So,
Oh man.
Yeah, it was rough.
So you focused on things that you've been procrastinating or putting off to the side, and then you did some things that you felt like, well, I should get around to this stuff, even though I don't want to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I had no desire to do. I ended up, I had like 6 years of work that I'd never edited, that I kept every shoot, and it was a double. It was good because it was a double problem. I had all these shoots unedited. I had this data problem that I completely, decided that wasn't going to be my problem until it became a massive problem. And of course, they always become massive problems when you shove them under the carpet.
Yes.
So I edited like, a complete, psychopath on the on that front. I was plowing through it, and then I also reduced. I gained back like 6 terabytes off the drives that I was using. So that was good.
You have
And
a
it
sense
gave
of
me
accomplishment based on the terabytes that are now free.
Oh yeah, I told you I was competitive. I was like.
I actually can relate to that pretty directly in a lot of ways. Tell me now then, compare. Obviously, last year was a mess, but it's not like, on January 1st, a virus or a pandemic is like, well, that was last year. I mean, we're still dealing with a lot of things now. It's not like we're completely on the other side of it. But what's it like now? I mean, you were just at the Super Bowl, right? What is it like now photographing in these environments? Because you have a stadium that's, and I saw it on TV, but I don't have a sense of what it was like to actually be there. It's half full, or it's a third full, or what's it like now to be at these places?
Well, the Super Bowl was the first. I think it was I mean, I've been to a couple of other NFL games when they've let in a smaller amount of people,
right,
maybe family and close friends.
Right.
But the Super Bowl was the first event I've been to with a crowd. Is that right? Yeah, I think that is. Yeah, that was, they said there were 22,000 people there amongst the cutouts.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to not have to turn up 3 hours before an event just so you get the parking.
Right.
So there is an upside to it.
You're like looking at the glass half full.
Right. Yeah. But the reality is, without the crowd, they don't get their due. They're looked at as a cost center, really. But the reality for a photographer, they're so important.
Yes, right? Because of the vibe and because of the energy, right?
The vibe, the energy, the fact that you get great backgrounds. There's a lot, as much as I do like, leaving, 5 seconds before the event and getting a prime parking spot. I mean, I love the crowd being there. It's
shallow depth of field, right? And I say that on one hand, but then I also noticed this year that the lenses that they were using on TV they were really shallow depths of field. And I wondered, is that because the environment it blurs out, and so you don't notice that all you see is like a blur of crowd. It's not like you can tell, well, those are cardboard cutouts all over the place.
Right. Yeah, the Super Bowl did a great thing. I thought they did a very intelligent thing. They put the cutouts and they had people between the cutout. So that was pretty clever. I mean, some stadiums I've been to, they've just had sections of cutouts, and then empty sections. So I thought that the way the Super Bowl or the NFL, whoever sorted that out, was a pretty clever move, to be honest with you.
Now we have some gearheads that listen and that are always interested in what are you shooting with? What lenses are you using? Talk to me a little bit about the R5, right? Like that's the big daddy right now. It's got amazing tech for sports, and we've talked about, you need to concentrate, because it doesn't matter if you have the best camera in the world in your hands. But now flip that coin a little bit and talk about the R5 with me and why it's so great in your mind.
Well, I mean, it's pretty simple, to be honest with you, Jed. I mean, the ability to not make any noise.
Yeah, it's
silent.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not quite a revolution as analog to digital was, but I mean, that's mind-bending. For me.
I could have used that in those wedding days.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Christ, you in the church there. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's not being noticed. I mean, that's the goal of every photographer,
right?
Is to be invisible,
right?
And they haven't quite developed the invisible cloak, but the silent camera is. Oh, I mean, the one example I've got for you is that when work did slightly pick up, I got to go to the US Open golf at Winged Foot.
Oh, yeah.
And, I realized that there was no crowd there before I was going. I was thinking about it. How was I going to work this, Right. Because when you're photographing golf, you use the crowd. You use it to hide amongst. You use it to, muffle the sound of the shutter going off. I mean, there's lots of reasons why the crowd work for the photographers.
Yeah.
And suddenly I show up there and I'm standing there, with a 400-2.8, and I'm like, I'm a sore thumb. I'm like so obvious.
No doubt.
The golfers haven't changed their perspective. They still want it to be dead silent. Right. And I learned it the hard way the first day. I was following a number of groups. The last group had Jason Day in it, and he was in the rough. Nice background, pretty average photograph, but I let rip with the motor drive I had the Mark III, the 1DX Mark III.
Yeah.
I rip it, and I'm thinking to myself, this is not a bad. This is a nice standard image, Simon. Yeah, well done. Big clap on the back. And then I hear this noise, and I look around, and I'm looking, and there's these people shouting, and I'm looking at them, and they're about 500-600 feet, 700 feet away, 1,000 feet. I can't remember the distance. They're shouting, and I'm like, who are they shouting at?
No way.
They're shouting at me.
No way.
They were shouting. They could hear they were on the top of the tee box, on the top of their drives, and I had ripped it, and they were pissed.
Oh, man.
I'm like, I've got to follow that group as well at some stage, and there I am. Oh God. So it straight away forced me to, because the Canon 1DX Mark III, the hybrid, I used the live view, and I realized, wow, I mean, this is going to save me from having a 9-iron shoved somewhere, So I quickly mastered the ability to do that.
Right.
On the back of the live view, and I had an R5 with me, but I hadn't used one before.
Mm-hmm.
And I got pretty good with it on the Sunday.
I was going to say, I bet that was even more incentive for you to learn that R5 as fast as you could.
Yeah, I figured that out. The great thing about, lots of other photographers having the same gear is that they, everybody's like, hey, I do this, I do that. And you've never read the manual. In fact, you've never seen the manual. You just, it's word of mouth, grapevining, and figuring out how to make it work for you. So from there, I ended up doing the masters all on an R5, and you know, guys, it's changed. That changes the way it changed the way I shoot golf. Totally silent, top of their backswing, getting close on a wide lens. I mean, wow. Seriously, I was pretty happy.
Well, and I would think that it's okay, because you were talking earlier about all the different variables, and we likened it to my experience with a wedding. So that's why it stood out to me. But all the different variables that you have to be on top of, and the pressure's there, and you get that one chance or that one day, and to be able to completely remove one of those variables, you know, like not being heard, you know,
right.
as you click that shutter, is huge, isn't it? It might not seem like that big of a deal to the layperson, but when you're in the moment and you're the guy and you don't have to worry about being heard anymore, that's enormous. I
mean, as I said, I equate it to the shift from analog to digital. I mean, and I'm a little surprised at how quiet that kind of is, and why photographers are not jumping up and down. Like, I mean, I'm jumping up and down on the bed, you know, like, it's quiet. There's no noise. Everyone's looking at me like I'm some sort of nutter, you know.
This is a big deal. Seriously, this is a really big deal.
And you know, I can foresee. I mean, obviously, I live in DC. I run into the guys who are working on the, you know, in the White House and on the Hill, right. And they are mandating silent, you know, mirrorless cameras.
Right.
I can, you know, sports events are going to mandate, golf events are going to quickly mandate mirrorless cameras.
True. It makes sense, because you get to a point where the bar gets raised to a point where then that's what's expected from everybody. It's like, well, what are you doing with a camera that's making noise here? You can't, you can't even shoot with that anymore.
I mean, as a photographer, you've never really been bugged by the noise because you're so used to it and immune to it. But when I did the masters, you know, I had guys shooting over my shoulder who were ripping the motor drive, and I was like, man.
And then all of a sudden you're like,
what's going on? So yeah, I mean, I mean, the silence thing is, oh man. And I mean, not even to talk about the feature work that you would do,
right?
Or
right,
you know, I mean,
right.
I'm like, I can't tell you how excited I am about the R5 and hopefully R5's brother or sister.
Right, right. So tell me this: you're part of you're Canon Explorer of Light, and you mentioned earlier, you talked about the time that you spend mentoring or instructing others.
Badly.
Well, I expected you to say that. I don't believe you for a second, but tell me about that piece of your job or your career or who you are as an instructor or as a mentor, and kind of maybe your desire through the Explorers of Light to speak to these next not just the next generation, the next generations. Because I almost feel like there's one or two below me, and you're 10 years older than me. So there's one or two below you too.
Hey, way to put the knife in, Jed.
Well, I'm putting it in both of us, in all fairness. And I say this because I have discovered that I'm not young anymore. I'm not. And there's more than one generation below me now in our industry, even, right? There was a big difference for me even between my early 20s and late 30s. Those are two very distinct pieces. And you're in a position now as an Explorer of Light where all of these people, you know, they look to the ELOs and it's like, that is the top of the heap, man. And you're there and you're in this position to speak to them and to mentor them. What's that like, and what does that look like, do you think, moving forward for you in your career?
Well, the first thing is it keeps me honest. I would say the most important thing is that it does keep me honest, because it is kind of humbling to, you know, I don't think anybody's interested in what I'm doing, or particularly when I start talking about it. I mean, I'm amazed that you wanted to talk to me, Jet. And maybe you didn't. But I suppose that part of it has been a real eye-opener for me.
Yeah, the realization.
The dawning realization, yeah. And then I think the other part is, photography is a pretty solitary business. So you're alone a lot, man. I mean,
Sure. No, I didn't think about it that way. Well, I mean, we have a portrait studio, so it's not exactly the same. But for you, that makes a lot. Yeah, you're on the road.
Yeah.
You're alone quite a bit out.
Yeah, so
even outside of the event.
Yeah, to be part of a group of to listen to other photographers talk about how they solve their issues and problems and how they manage to. I love listening to other photographers talk about their work and how they achieved it or they failed at it, or so that was one part of it. Obviously, the other part is to, as I just said, to recognize that I go and the ability to talk to people and explain what I've done and how I got there. And a lot of times I've never thought about that process, that creative process. I've never thought about it. And I'm like, well, I've
not consciously.
Not consciously.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I figured out where the on button is on the camera. I showed up at the event and hey presto, I've got a bloody massive Picasso in my back pocket. But the reality is, I am thinking about it all the time.
Always. Yeah.
So that part of it is I find really helps me across the board.
I like the keeps you honest piece.
Yeah, I mean, it does.
I think that's a big deal.
I'm glad you think it is a big deal. I do too.
Right.
And that's why I mentioned it to you. But yeah, I mean, teaching, that's what I wanted to be when I failed at school. And then I thought, well, what am I going to do? I want to be maybe a physical education teacher. They wouldn't even let me in. So I couldn't get in. So teaching is definitely, I'm not teaching the 101 way, but I'm happy.
Right.
I'm happy and somewhat honest with the people that I have mentored. And
those are the best teachers, Simon. Those are the best teachers.
Yeah.
The happy, honest ones are by far the best teachers.
Yeah, two words not associated.
You're one of the best, whether you like it or not. I have a sense that you're legitimately one of the best, whether you acknowledge it or like it or not. If you're honest and happy, what's better than that?
Yeah, I don't know about the happy part, man. That's a tough word to dissect. I mean,
tell me this: what's your next big thing? What's coming up for you? You job-wise, even what's on the horizon? What's staring you down?
So, I mean, this is last year. I got to go back to 2020. I hate to, but it was an Olympic year, so it was a full year of work. Yeah. There was a lot of work to coming my way as a freelance guy. So that all went away. This year, again, everything is being talked about, and I'm hoping everything gets off the drawing board. But I think part of what 2020 taught me was that you had to be you had to change at the drop of a hat.
Yes. So
you have to be on your toes on that, that part, big events. I mean, they're trying as best they can to figure it out. I'm hoping the Olympics happens. I'm down to go to the Olympics.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, and there's some other big events obviously happening in the year. So I'm hoping to get to them, but there is there's a strong chance that nothing.
There's a big we'll see still, right?
Definitely a big we'll see. Yeah. And I think you've got to be as flexible. Yeah, I'm definitely running out of projects that I've left on the shelf. Let's put it like that. So I'm kind of hoping.
You got 6 terabytes now, man. There's not much more to do there.
Oh no, man! I got more than that. I figured out the whole scene, man. Well, I didn't personally, but I couldn't keep going the way I was going. which is, you know, you'll see my Instagram post on how I dealt with it down the line. I'm planning something. Let's put it like that.
So tell me this, and end with this. What's your website? What's your Instagram handle? Where can people go find you on the web?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. SimonBruty.com and Simon Bruty at Instagram. I have a second one called anychance_. So
I like to hear about those second ones a lot of times because people don't know about those.
Yeah. I'm so that's how you can, see what I'm trying to do.
I appreciate your time. Thank you for sitting with me and going through my questions.
No problem.
Despite what you may think, I really did want to do this. I was nervous about this a little bit, and you put me at ease pretty quickly. And so I appreciate your candor. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, mate.
All right, have a good one.
Bye.
Hey guys, thanks for watching this conversation presented by White House Custom Color on YouTube. Be sure to check out our other content and click that subscribe button right there. Right there. It's there somewhere.